Hey everybody, welcome to a new week. I hope you've been well. I hope you managed to catch last week's video where I explained what the Mandela Washington Fellowship was, the other programs they have in Yali, and also a bit about the application, interview, and just what to expect during orientation and things like that. This week, I wanted to talk more about my experience in the US, both as a fellow in terms of the program that we went through at Clark Atlanta University, and also just the things that surprised me as I went to the fellowship, the American culture and things like that. And I will definitely share a lot of photos in a slide because I took so many photos. Me and my classmates really had a wonderful time taking a lot of photos, so I have a lot of photos. I will probably limit it to the photos where I appear. I did not ask permission from anyone else if they could appear in my photos, so if you see me alone in the photos, that's the reason. I don't necessarily want to have to put other people's photos and then ask for permission and all that. Not everybody wants their pictures on the internet like that, so it'll only be pictures of me, but I'll kind of explain the context. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you'll enjoy this video. I'm sure it will be a bit long, but because it's a resource and it might help future fellows who go to Clark, let's begin. So one thing I would like to point out that is very, very important that I did mention in last week's video is that when you're going to the US for the fellowship is that you're representing your country, and you're representing your country because you are the best in whatever it is you applied for. So don't go there thinking that you're being done for a favor by the American government. No, they've provided you an opportunity to meet people in their country and to also mingle with other Africans, but you are like a VIP guest of the president. Okay, at least for me I'd say it was for the president because Obama was actually president during the time I went. But you are important and you are representing your country. One of the things that we were encouraged to do, I don't know if the cohorts now are encouraged to do, was to carry gifts. Some of the gifts you carry, basically it doesn't have to be expensive gifts, just small tokens of appreciation or just something that would represent your country. So some of the things people carried were small pins with their flag. Other people carried pouches. You could carry a tote bag with your country flag and whatever. I guess depends on how much money you have, because this is actually money that you spend on the gifts from your own expenses. It's not money you're given. So you could do small notebooks, you could do stickers, you could do, there are so many things. Kenya, we have that Kenya bracelet. You could carry things like that. For me, I know I made things. I made hair accessories and other accessories that I gave my classmates and people like that. I also carried some tea bags because I figured that Kenya is very well known for our tea. So I carried a box of tea bags and then I repackaged them into smaller packages and gave that. So you can be as creative as you want. Just remember that you're representing your country. Another thing, definitely do remember that your documents will be very, very important, and especially if you have a lot of stopovers before you reach the US. I was lucky because I was going to Atlanta. The only stopover we had was through Europe in Amsterdam and then straight to Atlanta. There are people who reached the US and then took another flight to the state they were going to. So depending on if you, from most Kenyans, we all went to Atlanta and then we dispersed into different places depending on which state you were going to. So because IREX is the one that manages all the logistics, you could end up in New York, then take another flight, or you could end up in Atlanta and take another flight, or you could end up in DC and take another flight. It really depends on which airport you land in and things like that. So all that, it will make more sense when you're traveling and you'll be given your travel itinerary and things like that. So for me, it was just one stopover. I can tell you it was very, very stressful because just going through security was a process in itself. It took very long. The queues were long. We had left Kenya at around midnight. So yeah. So anyway, for me, I'm talking from experience of being a first time it was my first time flying, and it might be also a new experience for some of you. So just keep that in mind. Keep all your documents in your hand luggage. Please do not pack it in your suitcase and then it goes off. Ensure all your documents are in your hand luggage, the bag you'll stay with in the plane, because you're allowed one bag in the plane. And also things like how many kilograms your suitcases can be and things like that. Please check, because as much as you might end up in different airlines, and some of them have different rules, so it's very, very important to check your travel itinerary. I know some of those documents end up being so many and it's overwhelming, but just take time and read through them. It will really, really help you. At least for the Kenyans, when you're leaving the country, because you will all be together, it kind of is very, very helpful. But once you reach Europe or wherever it is they decide to make the first stopover to be, it can become very stressful. If you're lucky and they book you on a direct flight to New York, maybe it's even better. But immigration is very, very strict and serious, and I am also going to talk about it from an African perspective. Definitely different African countries are treated differently depending on how powerful your passport is, so don't take that for granted. So just make sure your documents are on hand. I don't think there's anyone who's ever really had any issues at the airport when they're going for the yearly program, and by now also so many people have done it, so I'm sure by now they're used to fellows going. But also there have been incidents of some fellows trying to disappear, so that's why the caution is very important, and that's why your documents are very important, and that's why following the rules is very important. So please make Kenya proud, don't try anything. And yeah, I'm just putting it out there because these things do happen. They actually happen, yeah. So when you arrive at the US airport, of course we went through immigration. It took so long, but yeah, I think it took 2 hours. And okay, we had a representative from Clark who was basically, I think he had all our schedules, and he was one who's coming to pick us up. There were actually two guys. They were taking turns coming to the airport and picking us and taking us to where we were going to stay. So that made the whole process easier. I really have no idea how the other schools were handling it, but probably the same way. I really doubt that fellows had to figure out how to get to the school. So after that, now you get to the school, then there's orientation for the school, the program, everything you're going to do and all that. But that was done when everyone had arrived, because people were coming from different countries, people were arriving at different times and dates. There are some fellows who did lose their luggage. So another tip is try and have a few clothes in your hand luggage as well, just something that you'll be able to change into immediately you arrive, in case you have any luggage issues. So do keep that in mind as well. So I'd like to tell you some of the things that I experienced culturally as someone who was traveling outside of Kenya for the first time. Some of the things that surprised me about the US. I'm 100% sure I've probably forgotten some of them, but I'd rather tell you that part first, because I would really like to share more about my experience at Clark with the pictures that we took. So one of the things that surprised me was how empty the streets were. I remember when we were going through the drive from the airport to the dorms where we were going to stay, which was not a very long ride, maybe 30 minutes. And I remember I loved that we passed Tyler Perry Studios, which was really amazing. It was before he upgraded it to what it is now. But I remember I really now started feeling like I'm definitely in another country. But I thought it was very surprising how empty the streets were. And first I was just like, where are the people? Okay, for people who are not the non-Americans, here in Nairobi, I am from Nairobi, there are always people on the streets. There are always people walking around on the streets, whether it's hot, cold, rainy. If the streets are empty, it's because either there is something that's happened, some unrest, so some riots happened, or it's a holiday or election time and all that. So it's very rare that it looks like a ghost town. But my first experience is, where are all the people? And I'm talking specifically from Nairobi, because I know there's some other African countries that don't have that many people on the street. So for me that was very surprising. I was like, where is everyone? And then I was later told it's because people drive a lot, that's why you don't see people on the street. And so that, it took a while to get used to that, because it's very, very strange. I'm very much used to seeing people on the street. from my American friends who visited Kenya, they've told me that Nairobi is very much like New York, where there are many people in the street. So if I went to New York, it would have felt more like Nairobi than going to Atlanta. So for me, that was a big surprise. But I did see that there were a lot of people when I got into buildings, and I started seeing people when I went for the different trips I went for, the different venues I visited and all that. That's when I saw that there were actually a lot of people, but it was just very weird. The contrast is amazing. Another thing that surprised me is how people were complaining about traffic, and I was like, I don't know what they would say if they came to experience Nairobi traffic. Nairobi traffic is absolutely crazy. Like from where I live to the city center, without traffic it's a 10-minute drive. With traffic you could take 1 to 2 hours to get here. So that is how bad our traffic is. So when people complain about traffic, like, you're waiting for 5 minutes and you're complaining about traffic, it really amazed me. Another thing was the food. It might be strange, although I've also learned that it takes a while for your taste buds to get used to foreign food sometimes. I've not had that issue with other countries I've visited, but with the US, I actually did find the food very tasteless, completely tasteless, and the things that had taste were the fast food. So what I found tasteless were the vegetables and the meats and all that. But we were eating cafeteria food. I don't know if it was because it was cafeteria food or not, but I did find that the food, I'm not talking about that it didn't have flavor, I'm talking about the food in its raw form didn't have taste. So I don't know if it's because it's genetically modified or anything like that. I could be wrong, but that was my experience. It was also very, very hot because it was summer. It was like as hot as Nairobi usually is. In our summertime is usually January. But the difference with Atlanta is that it was also a bit humid. So for me it was fine weather because I love my humidity. It's very good for my skin, so I love humidity. So for me it was fine, but I know some of my other African fellow friends were struggling a bit because they have maybe drier sunshine in their countries. And yeah, so for me, because in Mombasa, our coast, it's very humid. In Nairobi it's very cool, and then in Kisumu it's very hot and dry. So since I have experienced all that, the weather was okay for me. Another thing was the America I saw on TV is not the America I experienced. I think it really did surprise me. America on TV, for those of us who've not been there, it looks very exciting and there's so much to do and so many activities and all that. When I went to America, I learned that yes, all that is there, but you have to pay for it. It is not easily accessible the way you think. Every piece of entertainment we came across was you had to part with money to be a part of it, which is just very strange. You don't have to do that here in Nairobi. There are some things you pay for, but there are some things you don't pay for. So that was also a very interesting perspective for me. Another thing was the air conditioning. Every single building, because it was summer as well, every single building, public building, private building, air conditioning. Very strange. Here we open windows, we just open our windows and you try and cool yourself by drinking water and all that, but the air conditioning is everything. That was very strange. And at some point it kind of gets to you because you can't open the windows, because one of the things we were told to do was not to open the windows in our dorm room. So not having that consistent fresh air is just strange. So you do get used to it, but also the air conditioning is put such a low temperature. It was very strange to be indoors and feel cold, and the difference between the temperature outside and inside is so big. It was a lot. Yeah. The other thing was the long summer days. The fact that the sun was setting at like 9 p.m. was so interesting. It was very strange. And especially the first couple of days when you are trying to get over that jet lag and you're trying to adjust to the new time zone and everything like that. Having the sunset at 9 p.m. was very strange. But when you get used to it, it was so nice. I like that the fact that the days were longer, you could be outside for longer as well. I really did appreciate as well that the school was close to Walmart, just literally like across the road from where we were staying, where our dorms were. So I really appreciated that. It made shopping easier, it made getting things easy. So I really love that. Another thing was the shopping experiences, and I realized I understand why when I watch Shark Tank I always look at some businesses being beaten. I'm like, that would never work here. Who the hell would buy that? But in the US, even when you are at Walmart, you see so many things and you're like, okay, I can see why people would buy that. But if I was here, I would never think of something like that. I would never want to buy it. There's a lot of innovation in the US. There's a lot of things people have come up with so that they could try and make life easier. So it was very interesting. One of the things that really surprised me was paying extra money at the till. So basically in the US, unlike here where the tax is already included when you're shopping, so what you see on the price you see on the shelf is what you pay at the till. But in the US, you pay the price on the shelf and then you add the tax at the till, which was very strange. I remember the first time, I think at Walmart I really didn't notice because it was mostly in cents because I was buying small things. I wasn't buying a lot of things. But when I was doing bigger purchases, it really did surprise me. So I was explained for that basically you pay your tax at the till. So be careful with that and understand that. I did find a bit of a loophole by buying things online, and I realized that when I bought things online I didn't have to pay that tax. I don't know if that has changed, but that was my experience then. And then also when you're shopping at the supermarket, you pack your own things. At least where we were, we did pack our own things. Here in Nairobi, we are used to things being packed for us, so it becomes a bit shocking to see. You know, you're standing there waiting for things to be packed, and then you actually packing things for yourself. You kind of, depending on the kind of person you are, if you really just observe what people are doing, you'll kind of get the gist of everything. So that's, in a nutshell, that's it. I will now share photos of what I did, because I did other activities outside of what the school had planned. The school did plan some other social activities for us. I will just share photos and explain. I think it's more interesting. That is what you actually see images of what that was like. Another thing I did before I left Kenya is that I did try and see what would be happening in Atlanta during the summer. One of the things I really feel bad missing was there's usually like an ice cream festival. The thing is, when you reach there, you kind of don't even know how you're going to figure out how you're going to get to some of those places. So I missed something like that. But I did go to the aquarium. The aquarium was in my bucket list even before I went on the plane, because it's one of the biggest aquariums in the world, and I figured that at least I'll be able to see some sea creatures, and I actually did see a whale, so that was a big plus. So it was really on my bucket list. And some of the other places like CNN, Coca-Cola and all that, thank God the school had already put it in our itinerary, so I did manage to go to some of those places. So I would definitely advise you to try and experience as much of Atlanta as a local as possible. And the beauty of some of these places that you can just book online. You don't even have to physically go and pay. You can do that, but you can also pre-book online. What really helped us is the school had arranged for us our transport. As I had mentioned earlier, the roads were empty and everyone is driving. So that means, because there was no really, I didn't really notice a public transportation system that you could really rely on, apart from Uber. And Uber is very expensive in the US as compared to here. So they did have volunteers who would drive us around, but most of the time you had to do a lot of things in groups. So you really have to organize, book ahead, try and do it with your classmates and things like that. So that really also helped. It helps the people who are volunteering, and it also helps us do activities together, bond and things like that. So I hope this information is helpful, and now I'm going to show you places I went to, and then I'll get into Clark, Atlanta University, a tour of I did manage to get pictures of the campus. And maybe you'll see something and you'll learn something about the school. I'll start with a few pictures I got with the tour of Atlanta, which is the capital of the US state of Georgia. So we were mostly in downtown Atlanta, which is a vibrant hub of rich and diverse culture infused with attractions such as World of Coca-Cola, Georgia Aquarium, CNN Atlanta, Jimmy Carter Library and Museum, Atlanta Children's Museum, Museum of Natural History, Martin Luther King Jr., Natural Historic Site, and Atlanta Zoo. So I went to a lot of these places. So this is basically the view of the city of Atlanta, so that you can get a rough idea of what I mean by the empty streets. Another thing I managed to do was to go to the Georgia Aquarium, and I really enjoyed my time at the aquarium. I think I took a couple of hours because it's a very, very big building. I'm only showing you pictures of the shark because I think that was the coolest thing I saw. And the whale was amazing. It was so big, as you can see in one of the pictures there, the dynamics, and there was a very thick glass. In fact, periodically we could see the people who actually clean the glass from the inside, which I think it's a very interesting job to have. Then I also went to the Centennial Olympic Park, where I actually did manage to ride the Ferris wheel, so I did get an aerial view of the park. There were some memorial stones, I think because of the Olympic Park bombing that happened when Atlanta was hosting the Olympic a couple of years ago, and took fun photos with the statue of Pierre de Coubertin. I hope that's how he pronounced his name. Yeah, so that was a pretty fun day. So now we move on to the sites of Clark Atlanta University. I'm just going to play the slides of the campus, the photos I took. So Clark Atlanta University is part of the Atlanta University Center Consortium. So it's Clark Atlanta, Spelman College, Morehouse College, Morehouse School of Medicine, and an interdenominational theological center. So it is the only historically Black consortium of private colleges and universities in the nation. So where we were staying was called Heritage Commons, which was very, very close to Walmart, I had mentioned earlier, as well as other campus facilities, the schools, the dining hall, the outdoor sports, running track, tennis courts, and all that. And there was an option of using a golf cart if you didn't want to walk, but most of the time we walked. So as I show you more photos of what the campus was like, our schedule consisted of 4 days of lectures, so in the classroom, 1 day of experiential learning, 1 day of community service, which was on and off. It wasn't every Saturday, and then some Saturdays and Sundays were for cultural and social activities. So we really did have a packed schedule, but we did have free time as well. So some of the things we were supposed to have done by the time we were done with the course was to complete a business plan, get new networks and peer contacts, get leadership training and training techniques, and new business resource tools. Everything we did at Clark was very, very practical, and I do remember a lot of it because of just the method they used for teaching, and the case studies were so many. Kenya was really, really shining in a lot of those case studies, so we are doing something right for sure. So definitely the whole curriculum was very engaging and very good. One thing I'd like to mention is that there was a lot of invitations we got to people's homes as well. So all our visits were not strictly institutions, but also people's homes, especially like the 4th of July barbecue and things like that. So we did manage to do that. We did also volunteer at the Peachtree Road Race, which is a race they have as well around the time of the 4th of July. We went on shopping trips to different malls, so that was also something we did. There were some paid expeditions or activities that were paid for by the school that were not necessarily compulsory. They were optional, like going to Coca-Cola and to the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. We also did community service, where it was very, very painful to throw away chocolate at the food bank. We went to different places to meet various people in the business community of Atlanta, like Invest Atlanta, Atlanta Business League, Atlanta Metro Chamber of Commerce, the Allen Entrepreneurial Institute, UPS, IBM, CNN. We met President Jimmy Carter as well, and we went to the Carter Center Presidential Library. We met the mayor of Atlanta at the city of Atlanta, the city hall. We did a lot of things in Atlanta. I can't really even put all the photos here. I'm just showing you highlights because I also don't want to make the video very, very long. And also just to show you what a full experience it was.
all this was done in 6 weeks before we went to Washington, D.C., where we had our summit with former US President Barack Obama. Another thing that really surprised me about American culture that I hadn't mentioned before was they snack a lot. So there was a lot of snacks in between classes, which was just overwhelming. So much sugar. And then the plastic was such good quality, I couldn't believe that we kept throwing them away. So that was also a very interesting thing. So these are the highlights of my time at Atlanta. I hope it has given some insight of what it was like. It was really a full experience, and it was very practical, and we did have a lot of fun as well.
In a nutshell, that is it. I hope this is helpful. If you're going to Atlanta, whether or not you're going to Clark, I hope that this information has been helpful and that you will enjoy your stay at the US and you'll make the most of it. And maybe even visit some of the places I suggested. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end, and I'll see you next week. I am going to talk more about my conclusion, basically what I think the fellowship is about, what I think can be improved about the fellowship, how the aftermath of the fellowship, basically how it has impacted my life after going through the fellowship and all that. It's been a couple of years now, and I think it's easier now to talk about it. Also gathering from information from previous fellows, the successes of some of the other fellows, especially Kenyan fellows, and for some people it didn't really work out, but I guess it just depends on what you make the experience out to be. It really just depends on you. So I hope I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for your support and for watching this video. Bye.